Happy Friday. Welcome to the Schuh Show. That's Rob Schuh. I'm Grant Cohn. We got an hour of 49ers topics for you right now. And but to start, I'm going to do my obligatory intro that I'm doing every day now. Just want to let you know that I'm not going to be talking about the drama with Javon Kenlow. It's over. I've talked about it. I'm not talking about it anymore. He's not talking about it anymore. I'll talk about him when he's healthy and on the field, which he's not yet. So if you leave a super chat about him and you want to ask about that, I'm not going to read it and you're wasting your money. I just want to throw that out there right now so you don't waste your money. And there's a lot of other things to talk about, players who are healthy on the field. You know what I'm saying? Let's let the guy rehab in peace for now. Moving on. Trey Lance, first week of OTAs, media sees one day, but he practices. I don't know if he was there. I think there was a Monday practice. They may have had 3 or 4 practices this week. In front of the media, it was 17 to 20. It's pretty good. And then according to Pro Football Focus, they heard from a source that his best day ever essentially was this yesterday, that he just wowed people. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there, but it's interesting. All of a sudden, like, the leaks are beginning more plentiful, and we didn't hear this stuff last year as much. What do you think?
I mean, it is, I find it refreshing, right? I was sick of all of the leaks that seem to be unsubstantiated negative rumors. And now it feels as if the media machine is pushing out what I want to hear, which is, whether it's truth or not, it's what I want to hear at this moment in time. I need some optimism. I need some hope. I need to believe in Trey Lance, which I do. What jumped off the screen to me, which was very palpable over video, and I'm curious as to your impressions in person, just how important and just how different was Trey Lance's confidence out there, was his outward appearance in those sessions?
I mean, it was obvious. They say players take their biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. You could see it with a lot of these guys. Well, I'm going to talk about some other year 2 players in a little bit. But with Trey, I mean, he looks like a quarterback who's not a rookie anymore. Been in the office for a year, knows where to go with the ball, isn't like getting the ball, standing in the pocket and freezing. Didn't do that at all in front of us. Interesting about what's going on right now. Like, this wasn't part of training camp last year. He was healthy, but in preseason, he broke his finger.
Right.
And in the time, athletes are like, it's fine. It's good. It's no problem. Because they're tough guys. And you love that. But then after the season, when it's over, they'll be like, yo, yeah, I didn't tell you the truth on that one. Like, Now that it's all good, let me just tell you, it was bothering me all freaking year, and I couldn't fully extend my index finger. Like, I had to relearn how to throw. It's like, oh, you told us it was all good. So, yeah, that really affected him, and I think maybe it's why they used him as a running back against Arizona, because he literally had a broken finger. So that's not there anymore. That's good.
Did you interpret that? I know that I can't recall who in the media it was, but someone took that and sort of ran with the narrative of, well, that sounds like an excuse. That feels like Trey Lance coming out and saying, I didn't perform well last year, but wait, there was a reason for it. That's not the sense that I got of it. It seemed very honest. It seemed very open. I was much more in the camp of what you just described there, that last year he couldn't talk about it because it was active. You can't give that sort of ammunition to defenders, right? You can't have them coming. If you have to pop in for a couple of plays, they're going to be all over that finger, just like they were with Jimmy Garoppolo towards the end of the year. They were grabbing at that hand, attempting to aggravate that injury. It's just part of the NFL. Did you feel Trey Lance was making excuses at that point? Or was this just legitimate honesty and transparency?
That's funny. That's like the football code, right? If you admit it, it's an excuse. I didn't see it as an excuse. Maybe his teammates would, or I didn't see it that way. Maybe his critics would.
Right.
To me, as a journalist, I appreciated him telling the truth, because there's so much of don't say anything in football culture, right? Like, thank you. That explains so much.
Right.
There's so much about last season I still don't understand. But the fact that his finger was really broken and he couldn't extend it maybe explains why he didn't get that job.
Yeah, it makes sense why you wouldn't be able to turn over the reins. There was certainly a point in time last season where a lot of fans, even those that are optimistic, even those that said Jimmy Garoppolo deserved to start at the beginning of the year, at 3-5, it felt as if maybe it was time to give Trey Lance a try. Now, obviously that worked out in the 49ers' favor not to do that, but you wonder if it wasn't for the finger, if it would have happened.
Now, it's ironic, or maybe it's ironic, is that Jimmy messed up his finger as well. It was his thumb. And Jimmy had to play through it, and Trey was able to not do it. But I guess, I mean, better to have your 29-year-old veteran who you're not committed to long-term to gut it out than your 21-year-old rookie who doesn't really need to play through an injury when he's 21, I guess.
Right. And with Jimmy, it seemed to be a matter of pain tolerance, right? If you can tolerate the pain, the grip was still there enough. He had enough tensile strength to be able to throw the ball. It sounded as if in the way Trey described it, it really was a shift in throwing motion. I mean, the inability to have that last finger coming off the ball come off successfully and having to shift it to now replicate what he was used to doing with the index finger with his middle finger instead. I mean, that's relearning how to throw the football, essentially.
Right. And it's something you could probably do in practice when you're thinking about it. But the whole thing about playing quarterback is you can't think about your mechanics when you're in the pocket reading defense. All that stuff has to be like muscle memory.
Right. Under fire.
On the secondary, right? You're not even looking at the pass rush.
Yeah.
You focus on the coverage. So we didn't really see him have to do that. I mean, he was inaccurate against Arizona. He was. And he was inaccurate against Seattle. But then when he came back later in the season and he said he still wasn't 100% against Houston, completed 60, almost 70% of his throws. So I think
what I saw in Seattle when I first saw Trey Lance in person, when I went to the game up there and watched him, I was very close to the 49ers sideline. And so I watched the warm-ups and I had my eye on Trey Lance the entire time when it was the foursome, right? He and Jimmy and the two receivers throwing back and forth. And it was just so apparent that he was wrapped up in his throwing motion. And after every throw, he was popping his arm and redoing the throwing motion just to get the snap back in it. At the time, I just thought that, he was a rookie working through his mechanics. Now it makes more sense to me. The two jive together, in my opinion. What I hear from Trey Lance doesn't sound like an excuse. It matches up with what I observed last year, and it helps to explain some things. I'm glad that he came out and said it. I don't view it as any type of an excuse. I just view it as transparency.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, it's really too bad that happened. I mean, he got that injury, and I want to say the final preseason game or the second to last. I think there's only 3 now. I think it was the last one.
Right.
He was playing deep into the second quarter behind the second string offensive line, a bunch of guys who didn't make the team. And it was an unfortunate injury. It happens in football, but at the same time, maybe it could have been prevented. Too bad. It's really an unfortunate break, but I think it explains why he's drawing these rave reviews now. And I think it's very good. I just hope that they can protect him. I really just hope that they can protect him.
Let me just ask these rave reviews, trying to put it in context. When you saw the command that Trey exuded when he was out on the field for that one, admittedly, it's just one OTA, and we've got to continue this observation, and I'll be interested to hear how that evolves for you next week. But when you looked at the command that he had out there in the offense, did it appear to be a player that was in his second year that had only 2 starts under his belt, or did it feel like more than that? Do I have reason to get more optimistic here, Grant?
I mean, that's a great question, right? Like, he looked better than Jimmy normally looks in practice. And I've talked a lot that Jimmy isn't a great practice player, but he looked like a guy who'd been doing it a long time. Like, he wasn't like last year, he was really good, but he would hold the ball a while. He would sort of hunt the big play. He'd want to impress you with the big throw, with the big velocity throw, the big throw down the field. In this day, on Tuesday, he just took what the defense gave him relentlessly. Check down to the tight end, check down to the running back. A lot of short throws with touch. I mean, he wasn't like firing fastballs through like people 5 yards away. He looked like a vet. I mean, and again, I know the Niners went with Jimmy last year because he was a vet, but my whole critique with Jimmy is that he doesn't play like a vet. He's low on game experience, and he doesn't make many strides. So in a sense, he's kind of a young quarterback too. He's young at heart.
Right.
And so I feel like Trey actually looked more of a veteran than any quarterback I've seen on that field in a while.
Wow.
But it's just one practice.
Sure. Yeah. Small sample size. Got to keep observing.
It was sharp. It was on time. I mean, he wasn't trying to do too much. It was May. Let's just get through it. 17-20. And but the thing is, when he does miss, the 3 misses, each time it's like, ooh, it's like high and away in the dirt. It's like almost like if it was baseball, the catcher made it just an amazing grab. But that's kind of what like Randy Johnson was like when we were kids.
Is this a little bit of Charlie Sheen from Major League? Like, do we need to get Trey a pair of glasses?
Effectively wild. Yes. And that's I think when he misses, he kind of misses big. And that's like, oh man, accurate. But that was Josh Allen too. Like, accuracy is an issue. Like, whoa, just wait till the end of practice, count the completions, the attempts. I bet you he's actually pretty efficient.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you would think that comes back to someone who is actively working on their throwing motion, that you're going to have hiccups like that if you are in your head. The plays where I'm sure the body is speaking to him, where it's muscle memory, are the ones that come off cleaner. And those where he's up there in his noodle are probably the ones where the ball is sailing.
Also, I think there's something about Trey Lance that old school coaches love. He's like sort of like the best of both worlds, like the new school athlete at quarterback and the old school quarterback, because he wants to play quarterback.
He's a grinder.
He's a grinder. He loves the film. He wants to perfect the pocket stuff. He can do the other stuff,
right?
But his mentality is to like meet Kyle on his terms and not be like, I can prove that I can play my way. And I think coaches freaking love that. And Brian Griese was talking about it yesterday. Was it yesterday? 2 days ago. And he was essentially saying like, look, I've seen him on tape. I know the skill. I can make my own assessment of the skill set. But what I really like about him is how he approaches the position. You know, his mentality for the position. I think, I don't know if it sets him apart from other young quarterbacks, but it seems like to be a very distinct part of his makeup that people like.
Did you get the sense in talking to Brian Griese that it was Trey Lance that attracted him to the position? Or do you think that it was truly the Shanahan connection that has existed for some time, that regardless of who that quarterback was, Brian Griese would have been interested in the quarterback coach position?
It's a good question. I asked him that question straight up. I said, how excited are you to coach him in particular? And he was like, look, man, I just want to be a coach. That's what he said, flat out. I just wanted to be a coach. I know Kyle. There's comfort. I've known him for 25 years. I'm here because I trust Kyle. Now that I've gotten to know Trey Lance, this is what I like about him. But I think he took this job without knowing much about Trey Lance.
That's fascinating.
He was like, basically, I had 2 days to decide whether I was going to take this job. Like, he knew some about Trey Lance, but I'm sure there's a lot more now. And I'm sure the decision wasn't like all about like, oh man, me and him. I think he's basically thinking like, I've never coached before. I don't know if I can do this. This is a great opportunity. See what happens. And you know what? There's another coach in the room too, Clay Kubiak. Kubiak's son, 32 years old. And I think he's been a coach before. I have a feeling, even though he's not the quarterback coach, that he's working hand in hand, step by step with Brian Griese. Maybe early on, Griese's leaning on him because of the experience.
That makes sense. And Kubiak has been brought up more in the standard Shanahan fashion, right? From within, started out on the defensive side of the ball to really, truly learn defensive schemes first. That seems to be what Shanahan wants in his offensive coaches, to truly master the defensive side of the ball first, so that it's not as if you're designing an offense in a vacuum. You are specifically designing an offense to beat a defense, right? And in understanding what a defense does, that helps you to design a successful offense.
I sincerely hope that Clay Kubiak is the next Niners head coach after Kyle Shanahan. When Kyle Shanahan gets his 10th Super Bowl and retires, I hope Clay Kubiak gets, because Clay he was a high school English teacher. You know that?
I did not.
He was a high school head coach in Texas. Those jobs are big time.
Right.
In Houston.
Right. You got a lot of responsibility.
There more football coaches should be English teachers, man. I would love to interview that guy. But they didn't have that thing yesterday. That's too bad. 2 days ago.
So let me ask one more thing about Brian Griese. Do you think that there's a good personality match? What I noticed that I was a bit surprised about in your question to him and the video that you posted of Brian Griese's answers was he seemed a bit soft-spoken in that hallway setting that you guys were in. And for someone with a media background, as he has, I guess I expected more of a confident persona. But then when I thought about it, it seems like a pretty good match. I mean, Trey Lance came out and had a lot more confidence in the presser, as we saw, but still is a fairly soft-spoken, easy-going kind of a guy. What do you make of the initial returns of the pairing of those two, speaking specifically to the personalities?
Well, I haven't seen them interact, but I mean, Griese was asked about this, and he was extremely candid and honest, is what I have to say. And he was like, "Look, I mean, he's 7 years older than my daughter." And he said with kind of like a twinkle in his eye. He's like, I mean, like he's closer in age to my daughter than me, so like it's not just that I'm getting to know Trey; it's like a whole generational thing, Right. And I think so. I think, yeah. I mean, they're getting to know. They're in the getting to know each other. They're courting.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, it's all niceties at this point.
Let's see how it goes after like the first loss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If they start 0-1, how are they going to be talking to each other the next day?
Totally. What's after the first fight? How's the relationship doing?
Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's answer some questions.
Let's do
Jody
it.
Moore says, hey guys, report just hit today that his finger injury was more significant than we first thought and that he had to change his throwing technique. What do you guys think we see now that it's healed? Now, this was about 10 minutes ago. We talked about this at length. I hope you feel satisfied that we answered it, but I do think this is extremely significant, as you said. Extremely.
Yeah, agreed. And it will be refreshing to see that it is healed, to continue to get the information that, like, hey, the throwing motion's good, that we're progressing this year, and just sort of put it behind him.
Imagine if we knew last year how severe the injury was. Imagine if we knew, like, right after the preseason game, like, hey, this is it's just a finger injury, but it's probably going to affect him all year, and it might wipe out his whole rookie year. People would have lost their minds.
Yeah, Shanahan would have gotten, even more heat than he was getting at that point in time. And let's remember that regardless of how that season turned out, at that moment, at 3-5, Shanahan was getting a lot of heat. It would have just been amplified had we learned that he left Trey Lance out there and Trey Lance's rookie year was negatively impacted as a result.
And it just shows you that there's a lot that teams don't say. They just don't talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't talk about Fight Club. They don't talk about these things.
Right. Even with, there are regulations that sort of require them to disclose. I mean, you've seen teams get in hot water for not disclosing injuries. And so it is interesting to know that there's still, there's transparency, but not complete transparency in the NFL.
I have to go back and look, but I'm fairly certain that Trey Lance wasn't on the injury report.
Right.
With the finger past, the first few weeks after it happened, if he ever was.
And I feel like if you can't straighten that finger, you should have been on that practice report. Probably.
All Niners says, I hope Kyle uses Trey in a way that minimizes injury risk. Yeah.
Is that possible? I mean, with his skill set, I guess it is to some degree, because if he is primarily a pocket passer first, that alleviates some of the concern, but you're still going to take shots. I mean, this is the NFL. He is going to use his legs.
You know what the best way to protect a quarterback is? 5 good offensive linemen. So, I mean, Kyle could use him in a way, but he really needs to figure out, Alex Mack, if you want to come back, that would be great. Mike McGlinchey, they need you, all that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Building around him, making sure that you have a cohesive unit, a deep offensive line, that's the best way to keep him upright.
I would say so. Josh Cheney says, why would they withhold this narrative? This could have helped them back then. Well, we just kind of pointed out, it also would have looked really bad at the time. Hold on, Trey Lance suffered a near season-ending injury in preseason.
Right.
Playing with backups. It's terrible.
Right. He was very clearly in there to your point of keeping him healthy with 5 good offensive linemen. He was not in there with 5 great offensive linemen. They were backups, right? It's preseason.
I mean, the Niners worked harder to protect Jimmy Garoppolo in the preseason than they did with Trey. Trey was like, hey, go out and prove yourself. Okay.
Right.
And I broke my finger. And now the entire rookie season is in jeopardy. Oh, well, at least you got those good reps. Oh, man.
There's that blend of old school and new school that you still see in Kyle Shanahan. Some of those things that feel like they've stuck around, and I do give him credit. He does evolve. Sometimes it feels like slowly. In practices, he used to really stick to his father's mantra of you practice hard. You go out there and you practice the way you're going to play, and that's going to help you out there on the field. And then you get a ton of injuries, and you're like, well, maybe practice isn't quite as important, and we're going to evolve there. This feels like another area for Kyle Shanahan to improve, is not really forcing rookies to quote unquote prove themselves in the way that he has in the past.
Certainly. Niners Daddy says, proud Cognac that has your back, Grant. The Cognac thing was great. Thank you, Pat McAfee, for thinking of that. That was genius. I'm definitely taking that. Who will have a bigger impact on Trey this season, Clay Kubiak or Brian Griese? I mean, I don't know. It's a good question, but when I was watching the quarterbacks warm up, it just struck me that Clay Kubiak was leading the drill and Brian Griese was sort of watching. And probably that's appropriate at this point, since Griese's in his first week as a coach and Clay's done this before, even though Clay's 15 years younger than him or whatever. So maybe Clay. I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting dynamic there to watch in the quarterback room.
Certainly. Steven, thank you. Niner Nation says, Grant told you Debo getting that money. Pay 19 and pay 5. All right, let's talk about that. Debo Samuel, back in the Bay Area. He was at the Warriors game last night, sitting courtside next to Jason Verrett, who's on the 49ers. And then like the camera, the Jumbotron caught him and he like looked up like he was like, oh, like, oh, me, you caught me. Oh,
here I am.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, oh, I didn't want it, but here I am. So loved it.
Didn't want to be seen on courtside seats.
Oh, they found me. Oh, it's terrible. Great. He's back in the Bay. How do you interpret this?
I mean, I have to interpret this positively, right? This is a Deebo Samuel sighting. He's in close proximity to where he needs to be in order to get a deal done. But I also have to question, like, if I'm looking at the dominoes that I interpret needing to fall in order for Deebo to get that deal signed, actually inked, I don't anticipate that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get moved. It doesn't seem like the 49ers are going to cut anyone or extend Jimmy Ward. So I just wonder how they're going to get that deal done if it's going to be in the near future. Do you get a sense that seeing him makes a deal imminent?
Kinda. Maybe not imminent, but I just feel like it's inevitable. He's acting and moving around like he's a 49er.
Right.
He's acting like he's a 49er. Like, for example, so he's sitting next to Jason Verrett. Not just that. Okay. Stuff goes down between me and Javon this week.
Right.
A bunch of Javon's teammates come to his back, as they should.
They did. Yep.
Who's one of them? Deebo.
Acting
like a 49er. That's another good sign. To me, when he's not even thinking about it, his instinct is, that's my teammate. I'm a 49er. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a good sign. So it seems to me like everyone's thinking, oh man, maybe Deebo's just had it with this team, and maybe there's no talk. Like, seems that they'll probably work it out by the end. He wanted his money now. He's not going to get it now, but he's going to get it if he waits 2 more months.
I agree. In the past with contract negotiations, what's your impression of who the players are pissed at when they're pissed in a contract negotiation? Do they direct that at the shield of the organization? Do they direct that at the owner? Do they direct that at the front office? Are they able to, in your experience, in past instances, compartmentalize this? Is this going to continue on for Deebo as something that lingers?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not plugged in enough to be able to tell you like how George Kittle really feels after going through this.
Right.
He wouldn't tell me. So I don't know, but it's something to monitor. It seems like it's kind of like opens your eyes to the reality of the situation. You get drafted. Everyone tells you you're great. You think they're going to take care of you. And then you sit down and they tell you what you don't do well. And the negotiating process probably hurts. I mean, if people find me critical, what do you think the team tells them when I can't take money away from players? The teams take money away. You thought you were getting this? Well, let me tell you why we're offering this. That might be tough. That might be tough to hear. So I don't know. On the other hand, maybe if Deebo Samuel gets like $50 million guaranteed or something, he'll be like, you know what? Water under the bridge. We're good. Who knows? See,
good.
We're good. Yeah.
I mean, I have to think that as he's driving the new Lamborghini, as he's driving the new Bentley, like it'll start to realize he's like, all right, I forgive you a little bit. Like, yeah.
You said some things, I said some things, and now it's working out. I mean, that's how it should be, right? They're going to give him what he deserves, I would think.
It should, but I will say that in this instance, more than others, it really felt as if the animosity was very real for Deebo Samuel. And so there is a part of me that wonders if it can be completely forgotten. And the hope in my part, in wanting Deebo to be the teammate that he was and wanting him to be a part of the organization in the same fiery way that he was before, part of me hopes that he's able to, I don't know, direct that at Parag or someone that is just not football side of the operation.
The one thing about the whole thing with Deebo this offseason that's kind of strange to me is it seems like the thing he wanted most, more than anything, was to be paid now.
Right.
That's what his thing. I need it now. Why? It's like, I mean, I don't think it's an issue of amount of money because the Niners have pretty much come out publicly and say, like, we know what it costs. Like, we're going to do it. But like, they're also saying we don't do business like that. We don't do business in March. Like, you're going to have to wait like Kittle did. And I think he's kind of gotten that now. But I don't understand why it was like the timeline was such an issue for him. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, what Deebo did on the field last year was very unique, right? It brought references of Jerry Rice to the table. That gives you a sense of the kind of season that Deebo had. Is it possible that he wanted to change the way in which the 49ers did business, to be recognized as such a special talent that, we usually wait until July to get these deals done. Deebo, you're special. You're unique. We're going to make an exception here and show the world that you're a top priority for this team. And that in failing to do so, it felt like a poor reflection on Debo and didn't recognize the special nature of that season.
That's one interpretation. There are other interpretations.
Sure.
When a person is demanding money now, what other things might go through your head? I mean, I don't need to say it because it's all speculation, but it's strange. And the fact that he's backed off a little bit and says, all right, and I'm in the Bay, we can take the whole summer. That's a good sign. I don't think it's a good sign when someone says, I need all the money right now. Like, why, man? Just chill for 3 months.
Yeah.
Like everyone else. What's going on?
Dude was mansion shopping in Miami, right? Maybe his real estate agent was like, hey, you got to get in the market right now. Get that guaranteed money.
The rates are going up, Debo. The rates are going up.
Maybe. You know this. You were in the home market.
That's true. All I know is he has he spends a lot. It seems like he spends a lot of money.
Yes, he does have expensive tastes going on.
Not a first round pick. He didn't get that big signing bonus like Ayuk and McGlinchey did.
Yeah. So, I respect his choices in vehicles. Any guy who's you put down some serious money on a car, you got my respect.
Anyway, all I was trying to say is that was a concern early in the offseason. Like, why are you so pressed about the timeline? But now it seems like he's not. Sounds like he's cool. Sounds like he knows he's going to get what he deserves. He has to just wait for it for 2 more months. I mean, that's a good thing for all parties involved. It seems like this is probably becoming a non-story.
I believe so. It seems as if cooler heads are prevailing in this situation. And that's what I always wanted, and have to give John Lynch credit for seeing that possibility, because at a period in time in this offseason, it didn't seem like that was going to be a likely outcome for these two parties coming together. John Lynch was patient. John Lynch saw the long game and played it. It seems to be working out. So I got to give him credit, because I certainly criticized how he let it get to that point. I have a side question that's related to what we saw last night with Debo and JV. Is JV one of the coolest dudes on the team? Are we looking back in the day where Ted Ginn was like the coolest wide receiver in the locker room? I remember you specifically, I think, wrote a story about Ted Ginn, right? That broke down just how sort of obsessed other players were with him because he had that cool factor. I feel like players talk about JV, hang out with Jason Verrett in a way that makes me believe he may be that level of cool.
I would agree. That's a good parallel. A little bit older, been around, been through some things. People definitely respect him. Ted Ginn was a little different. Ted Ginn was a legend in college. I feel like a lot of people kind of looked up to him when they were kids. You know what I mean? They're like, man, I was in middle school watching you tear it up at Ohio State, that kind of thing. But Verrett too. I mean, Verrett, because he wasn't super famous in college. He was at TCU, but he was really good early in his career when he was healthy in San Diego. And I think, again, a lot of his teammates just kind of know his story. And he's a very intense person who's legitimately as good as anyone in his position when healthy. And he's kind of he has this not a tragic life, but not tragic. Yeah.
But filled with adversity, a large amount of adversity that he has overcome. Given the cool factor, given the adversity that he's overcome, if he's healthy from a team morale standpoint, does he have to make the 53?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
That
and
seems
I wonder
like
if he's not healthy right away, if they kind of keep him around on PUP or something and bring him back, he could be healthy mid-season. I mean, if they could get him in November, what an addition at the trade deadline.
Huge reinforcement.
Keneal says, didn't Mahomes have a similar reports before year 2? I think, word was starting to get out that he was going to tear it up that year.
Yeah, they started pumping the hype train.
Ivan says, some guy posted a photo of 19 in an airport and said he was headed to Cali. Who knows, though? Could be an old photo of 19 headed anywhere. No, he was at the Warrior game last night for sure.
He was. Kittle confirmed. TV confirmed.
He did. That's so funny. Everyone was breaking that story, man. Hella funny. Do you think a mobile quarterback makes O-line naturally better, i.e. some linemen will perform better with Trey, all-niner? Well, I mean, a guy who can avoid a free rusher, that helps. That helps the stats. But a guy who holds the ball longer, we'll see. I felt that one of the things that Trey showed as a rookie, his clear strength was to be able to avoid pressure with his legs. I thought he was very quick for a big guy and also very strong. It's hard to sack him, I thought. So.
That's an advantage. It's certainly, in hearing offensive linemen and Kyle Shanahan speak about it, there is that learning curve in having a mobile quarterback, just understanding what he's going to do back there, because you are attempting to block for what you expect that guy to do. You have to incorporate, like, where am I keeping the pocket right now? Because I know he's likely to move around here. So it does seem that there's that learning curve. Once they all get acquainted with Trey Lance, I would think having a mobile quarterback would be an assist in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how he plays, right? Like Steve Young, when he came to the 49ers and was holding the ball too long and abandoning the structure of the play, what McKittrick would say to Walsh is, my offensive linemen don't know where your quarterback is.
Right. He's all over the place.
He's all over the place. He's not adhering to the timing of the play. He's making our guys look bad. But as Steve Young got better, the mobility became an asset. Bail you out when an offensive lineman missed a block. That's what it could be. And I think, again, that's what Trey Lance aspires to be as a quarterback, that kind of a guy.
You see it with a guy like Russell Wilson, who is very patient in the pocket, but also has the wheels, that he will wait until sort of that last moment before using his legs. And that allows for it to be a blend of both a pocket passer and a mobile quarterback, adding on that benefit.
Yes. Sean Matthews says, real quick on Trey, he was redshirted his freshman year at NDSU, although he did play in 2 games at the end of the season. Sophomore year took over. I expect him to follow that same path this year. That's a really good point. He went to North Dakota State, sat for a year, digested the playbook, saw things, got his feet wet. Year 2, had one of the most historically good statistical seasons any quarterback in college has ever had. I mean, no picks. Was it 1 pick? No pick. I mean, he was just
no picks.
He was flawless. He was freaking flawless. And he was in Division II or whatever, and he was at a good school, but he couldn't have done his job any better. So we'll see.
Absolutely. I mean, I've said over and over that I think the 49ers lucked out in him having the COVID year, because had he come back in 2020 and done what he did in 2019, he wouldn't have been the 3rd overall pick. He would have been the 1st or the 2nd.
Sean Shepard says, a credentialed media person acts like this. Oh, why would an NFL allow this? Ever heard of freedom of speech? He's probably mad he was almost a football player and doesn't get McAfee AV royalties. Who?
That's unclear.
Unclear. The one thing, I mean, a lot of people I want to say are saying, you know, I need to change how I do my coverage, and I've been too disrespectful, and I do want to work on that because I can be relentless. But I just want to say, aren't we all complicit on this? I mean, how many of you guys are being like, hey, Grant, do the Jimmy pump fake again? That's hilarious.
Right.
I wouldn't put these videos out if they didn't do wonderful numbers. If you guys didn't eat it up, you guys find that stuff hilarious. So I play to the crowd. I mean, I find it funny too sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, a lot of people are like, oh, Grant, you messed up. You need to dial it back. Like, yeah, I mean, I think we all did a little bit. I think we all kind of had fun with this. I'm just saying.
I think it's, a fantastic opportunity for all of us to look in the mirror. I know that I did in this experience. It humanized further these athletes that I already believe to be very human, but it brought to the forefront their feelings. And I do think that's important. And I applaud you for considering all of that.
And I want to say, the line, I've been talking a lot about, like, the line. What is the line? It depends on the player. How about that? If you know the player, you know where the line is. And my problem with Javon is I met him for the first time 2 days ago. The pandemic, none of the reporters knew him. So, like with McGlinchey, he's different. He can take it. And frankly, I felt bad about all the stuff I did with McGlinchey. And then off the record, I talked to one of his teammates and they said, nah, he needs it. He's never going to complain. Did he complain about it? No. It's not his. He's like, nah, he needs it. It'll make him better. So it's different for player to player. Does Kenlow need it? No. Is it going to make him better? No. Am I trying to make him upset? No. So now I know. It's a player-to-player thing. I'm just saying.
I also think it's fair to recognize that, like, you will make fun of yourself in that same light. And I think it's the lack of personal relationship. It's the fact that you're not in the locker room that allowed for that divide to happen, right? I think your personality is very true to who you are. And when I met you in person, it confirmed to me that your heart is where I thought it was. And, you know, I mean, I just think it is your humor style. And I think once people realize that you're willing to dish it out and take it, that's different.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sean, Pat McAfee. Forget Pat McAfee. I don't watch Pat McAfee. I've tried to watch it. It feels like watching wrestling commentary. I'm sorry. Maybe people watch that. But it's just his whole bro vibe. Not for me. I respect that he does his thing. Any person who can make a living talking about sports, I definitely respect, but it's just not my style. He watches me. I don't watch him. Sorry.
Get it straight.
Sorry. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk's future with the 49ers. No one's talking about Brandon. Everyone's focused on Debo.
Yeah.
But to me, Debo's going to be here. Debo played so well last year, and they can't get rid of him. And they've made that clear. Doesn't matter if you're upset, you want to go. We need you. You're the team. And I think they'll probably work it out. That brings me to Brandon Ayuk. Debo Samuel's going to be getting quarterback money. Are the Niners prepared to give 2 wide receivers that if Brandon Ayuk has a big season, or are they maybe prepared to let him leave in free agency, get one of those comp picks, and maybe throw Danny Gray in the starting lineup in a year? What do you think? What's his stake for Brandon Ayuk the next?
Admittedly, Grant, I had not considered this, and I think it's a really, really valid point. I had only thought of Brandon Ayuk practicing with Trey Lance as a net positive, which it still is. You want a good season, even if that good season means that you can no longer keep that player. That's the net result of the NFL and the salary cap. But there is that other side to this equation. Will this expected breakout season for Brandon Ayuk make him near impossible to re-sign? And I think the answer there has to be yes. If Brandon does as well this season as I personally predict that he will, I believe he will be a 1,000-yard receiver and will push Debo to look like the most valuable receiver on this team potentially. I realize he doesn't do the same things as Debo Samuel. I realize he doesn't have the physicality of Debo, but he is different and better in some ways that Debo is not. We may get to see that this season. And I do think the end result is he may price himself out of being a 49er.
Also, I think when they drafted Brandon Ayuk, they did it with Jimmy Garoppolo in mind, even though those two never really developed a rapport.
Interesting.
He was a Yak guy. He's part of the Yak Bros.
Right.
He's an excellent player, but he's not a 4-3 guy. He's not a straight up vertical threat. Now he's a complete receiver. He's excellent. But I do think he was drafted with Jimmy in mind. Trey wasn't on the team when they drafted Brandon Ayuk. And last year, Ayuk was in the doghouse for whatever reason. And that wasn't that long ago. It does seem like it had something to do with him being used as running a lot of clear out routes, probably knowing he was never going to get the ball because Jimmy doesn't even look down the field. All right, well, that's a big part of the offense. And Danny Gray runs those clear out routes faster. And all I know is that when they drafted Gray, everyone was thinking, well, this is insurance if Debo doesn't work. Debo's coming back. And talking to Gray, he plays Ayuk's position. He's not a flanker. A flanker is a guy who goes over the middle frequently and takes those hits in stride and is built like Debo. Like, no, he's a split end, outside the numbers, do your work, near the sideline and down the field. That's Danny Gray. So it seems almost like they drafted a receiver this year just in case Ayuk prices himself out. Now, if Ayuk has a mediocre year, they could probably keep him. But he's not a mediocre player. He's a very good player. And he's gonna have a quarterback who actually throws him the ball now. So yeah, Ayuk might be auditioning for another team this year.
It's fascinating because it matches up with
his 5th-year option. I'm sorry. They could pick up his 5th-year option.
Right. They could indeed. He was a first-round pick.
Yes.
It does follow the 49ers' previous path towards replacing players, that they tend to jump on a year early, right, and bring in someone that could then fill that void. Oftentimes, as we saw with Aaron Banks or Trey Sermon, like actually not needing that player in the year in which they were drafted so much as they will that following year. So with the expectation that Brandon Ayuk may not be affordable if they didn't intend to pick up that 5th-year option, the timing of the Danny Gray draft pick does match up with that. Bold prediction early, way too early, acknowledging that Debo most likely has the more important role within the team, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has the greater statistical season. If you had to pick right now, based on far too little information, which we won't hold you to, but somebody will on Twitter, who do you think has the better statistical season, Debo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk?
Debo. Definitely against Ayuk. I think Debo's the best player in the league until something changes.
Right.
The Niners would be crazy to dial down his targets. They should go up.
Right.
He got like 20% of the targets last year. He should get 25. Whatever Cooper Kupp gets, Debo deserves because Debo's just as good. And nothing against Brandon Ayuk. He's just not as good as Debo. And Debo's that good. He deserves that much. It's like Steph. Like Steph, take all the threes you want, man, and then we'll figure out the rest after that. He needs his shots. So yeah, Debo. And then to me, I think I would probably bank on Ayuk having better numbers than Kittle. Not because I think he's necessarily better than Kittle, but I think he's getting better, and Kittle might be starting to hit the down slope.
The deep pass, whoever's catching more of those deep passes, it would seem like that would be the difference in the statistics there between Kittle and Ayuk. And to your point, I mean, it will be interesting to watch Kittle with that downfield speed after a few lower body injuries. If there's a world in which Brandon Ayuk is the true star of this season, and you look at the fact that Deebo Samuel, his greatest statistical season was with Jimmy Garoppolo behind center, right? I mean, that is just what it is right now. It could very well carry forward with Trey Lance as the quarterback. Is there a scenario in your mind where the 49ers would consider attempting to move Deebo and his new big contract if they realize throughout this year that the chemistry actually exists between Brandon and Trey?
Very interesting. I mean, it's possible. Even though they love Deebo, they do have some questions about him. I think they do. And if those questions pop up again this year, they might look into something like that. But if Deebo can maintain the player he was last year, dude, he's going to be a Niner for life. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's not going anywhere. I'm not sure he can, though, right? That's the question with him. He's done it once. He almost did it his rookie year. He didn't get the same amount of usage. He wasn't as consistently great all year because he didn't get the ball as much. He was behind Dante Pettis and stuff.
Right.
But if he could do it again, I mean, dude, he's playing like an all-time great Niner. At least he did it for 1 year.
Yes, it does tease the idea of being an all-time great. If he can sustain where he was last year, it seems like that's a likely outcome.
Noah says, when will you ask Bosa questions in your Bosa voice? See what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
the Niners have to love the attention you brought to the team. Do not change. Toughen up the Niners. I mean, look, again, every player's different, right? With Jimmy Ward, he's like, bring it on. You're an asshole. I love it. I love it. Bring it on. Some players are like, stop. I can't take it. You're affecting my mental health. Fine. I need to know you. And that's why the locker room is necessary. It's necessary. Let's see. Sean says, Grant, you help the rest of the Niner media, Schuh, etc., get legs in this platform, but honestly, you can learn a lot from your proteges. We know you are not a fan, but faithful, want respectful content, and so do the Niners players. I totally agree. I can learn from the people I work with, and I do consistently. Thank you for your comment. All right, let's talk about Drake Jackson. He's really interesting and I think really vital for this season. In the offseason, I don't know if you remember, but when free agency is about to start, there's always those rumors of players that might go to teams, and the Niners were getting linked to like big time DNs. Frank Clark,
right?
They were linked to Chandler Jones,
right?
It's like they're like, wow, they're really trying to replace D4. I mean, I guess they like Samson Ebukam, but not like that, and they didn't get anyone. And I guess some people thought that was just speculation, and then boom, first pick, D end, and I mean, that's kind of amazing. You think that's not even a need. And now I'm thinking, what's the plan for Drake immediately? Is he going to just take the D Ford role? And again, the D Ford role was not a starting role, but it was vital. It was like anytime it's second and long, third down, 2-minute drill, you're on the field. Anytime it's a pass, you're on the field. You can really affect the game that way. What do you think? What do you expect from Drake Jackson his rookie year?
Admittedly, I'm always optimistic, Grant. So let me preface it with that. But I am very optimistic on this particular piece as well. And I think with good reason. I look back at the type of role a specific pass rusher can have coming in, even if you just have a couple of moves, even if your skill set is fairly limited at that point. I look back to the way in which Aldon Smith came in and lit the frickin' league on fire in his rookie year. And yes, it was because Aldon Smith was a physical freak. Yes, it was because he possessed incredible talent. But I also think it had a lot to do with the talent that surrounded him on that defensive line. And I see parallels here. Obviously, we're counting on some players to come back and regain or grab form that we haven't seen before. Obviously, in the middle, you're really hoping for Javon Kenlow to come back and be healthy this season and fill that DJ Jones role. But the bookend pass rusher, when you look at the statistical efficiency of pass rushing for the 49ers in 2019, when D Ford was on the field, it changed that defense. I look at this defense in 2022 on paper, and I honestly see a top 3 defense. With that in mind, I don't think it's unreasonable to look at Drake as having an opportunity just as a pass rush specialist to come up with double-digit sacks this year.
See, that's the thing. Like, he could be the Niners' leading sack guy this year, or number 2 after Bosa. because I do think he's going to get a lot of playing time. I think he's going to slide right into that D Ford role. I think the Niners had him way higher on their board. They probably would have taken somewhere else, but he probably was in the 40s for them. I think Chris Kasarik was like dead set, like this guy's got it all.
Yeah.
I asked him, what do you like about Drake Jackson? He's like had a total checklist, and he's like, and that's why I think he's going to be a very productive pass rusher. Like, oh, thanks for not missing your words at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very fascinated by his description of second burst when he talked about that he's like, okay, so there's the obvious first burst that everybody watches, and that's the burst coming off of the line. But then you have the impact with the offensive lineman. And that's going to happen pretty much every down. And there needs to be a second burst after that. And that's the burst that actually leads to the sacks. Because if you can't get off the O-lineman and you can't get to the quarterback, it doesn't matter how quickly you met up with the O-lineman in the backfield. You got to get to the quarterback.
You also have to get flat on your turn. That not everyone can do that. And then if you have really long arms, it helps you get the quarterback. And that's something that even Nick Bosa doesn't have. Like Bosa, he gets off the block. He's got the secondary burst. But you see him a lot diving at ankles.
Right?
Diving, and he gets him a lot that way. But what you're going to see with Drake Jackson is a guy who just jumps on you. You know what I mean? Like, he's got the long arms. He's going to I'm not saying he's going to be better than Nick Bosa.
No.
I do think he's going to be really good. And I think he's going to be used the way Alden Smith was used as a rookie. Samson Ebukam, sorry, real quick. He was
please.
He was the base on the Rams. He never played on pass downs. He was a run stopper. And I think everyone thought the Niners were going to turn him into a pass rusher, and they might to a degree, but he is a run stopper. It's fair to bring him off the field on pass downs. He's used to it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, was just going to say, I'm not comparing Drake to Alden Smith, not in my earlier comments and not now, but I do see that similarity in being able to just engulf a quarterback with those arms, right? As you make that leap. With Alden Smith, it was ridiculous. He was the condor. He had a huge wingspan, and it just seemed like he ate the quarterback alive when he sacked him.
I want to tell you, I bought a new camera. I got a Sony ZV-1, but I didn't get a tripod, so I've had it here for 2 weeks. So do you have a tripod? Yeah, you have a tripod.
Hey, I'm behind the Sony cameras. They are dope. That's what I'm using.
But you have a tripod, right?
I do have a tripod.
Yeah, you gotta have a tripod. So
I have a tripod.
Just chilling here. It's really nice. Haven't used it once. I'm so dumb. Anyway, that's me. Matthew says pass rush is only effective when opponent is passing, i.e. Niners have the lead. Kyle Shanahan going to try to get early leads with Lance thinking Giants under Eli. Well, yeah, I mean, the Niners are built running the ball pass rush. Harder to win that way when you're down, but they're off and up.
Yeah, also, absolutely.
The addition to Travarius Ward is going to help this defense a lot. People aren't talking about that enough. And I've only seen him once. Haven't seen him give a catch yet. What are you calling me? Old Republic. I don't know that. I get so many robocalls every day.
It's unbelievable. Fair. Unbelievable.
You know you're in the middle of a shitstorm when you get calls from your loan officer being like, hey, man, are you okay? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's all over the radio, man. I'm like, dude, I've known you for like 2 months. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, man. Thanks for asking.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Hold on. I got you. All right, let's move on. Also, all the people who called me and asked how I was doing the last few days, I appreciate it. I'm doing fine. I'm chilling. But that was nice of you to check in on me. I appreciated that. Question for you. Who looked the most notably different? Hold on. That's probably not a question for you.
That's my question for you, my friend.
Let's try it again.
Yeah. Let's go back to that one. Grant, who looked most notably different to you when you were attending OTAs? Where was that physical change where you literally saw it with your own 2 eyes and you were like, that's not what it looked like last year?
Okay. Obviously Trey. But the second guy was Talanoa. And I it's only been a little. Who is calling me? Fredericksburg, Virginia. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Sorry. That's terrible. Okay. Talanoa. I'm not saying he looked faster. And people are saying I can be a little too harsh on players, that I just like beat the drum over and over. And like last couple weeks, I'm like, he's slow. He's too slow. He might be too slow. I don't know. But I feel like let's give him some credit for something else. He looks way stronger. And a lot of times, like rookies, they look good on college film, and then they come to training camp, and you look at them with the Niner jersey on in practice, you're like, you look like a rookie, man. You look like you're not as strong as all these other grown-ups on the field. And it's like you can really tell. And then people say players make their biggest jump between year 1 and year 2. You really can tell. Some guys just come back like, man, you've been lifting the last 365 days. And Talanoa looks like that. He looks like an NFL player. I don't know if he's fast enough or good enough to be a starting safety in the league, but he definitely projects that he's going to do everything in his control to make it happen. Like he's a real pro. So it's something. And I noticed this with Fred Warner early on in his career. When they drafted him, I looked at him and I thought, wow, that's a skinny middle linebacker. By year 2, I was thinking, man, that dude is jacked. Super duper. And, Kittle was that way too. When they drafted Kittle, I was like, that's a skinny tight end. By year 2, I was like, that's the most jacked tight end in the league. So Talanoa looks like a guy who is on the, eating the right things.
Yeah. And it's not good when a player comes in and their jersey hangs off them like it does off my skinny ass. That's not what you're looking for. You want them to be a little more filled out than that.
It's inevitable. All the rookies, it's inevitable. Yeah. It happens to everyone. It's
because it's comparison, right? You're looking at players who have been in an NFL weight room for at least 1 year, if not multiple years, versus someone coming out of college where they've been attending school and playing football at the same time.
The only exception to this is Bosa. Bosa came in the league looking like he was 30 years old.
A machine.
He looked 30. And when he started playing, I think he got the reputation quickly as like the strongest pass rusher in the league, the strongest edge rusher. Like he was lifting guys off the ground.
Yeah.
What rookie does? He was 21. Yeah, super duper strong.
Let me just say this because it's an opportunity to acknowledge how special college players are to both go to school and play football. Yeah. I had trouble just going to school, Grant.
Me too.
I didn't have to play football.
Me too. I went to UCLA. You take 3 classes a quarter, it's 15 units. It's so hard. And what I did was I had like AP classes saved up, units from high school.
Yeah.
I saved until the end. And my senior year, I had 3/4 of 10 units each. And I was getting great grades. I was like, yes, 2 classes. I can handle this.
Relaxing.
Finally, I can do all the reading. It's so nice.
This Hufanga news, I mean, it strikes me as him doubling down on his strengths, right? You could say, hey, your weakness is your inability to cover the field because you don't have the speed of a traditional safety in that regard. But if you are doubling down on your strength of hitting people and being able to be there at the point of contact, be a bit of a Cam Chancellor type of enforcer out there, and to Jimmy Ward's comments of trying to download everything in Jimmy Ward's brain into Talanoa Hufanga so that they can play complementary roles, I have reason for optimism. I can see a specific instance where you play to Talanoa's strengths. Jimmy Ward compensates for some of those areas where he's not quite as strong. And together you have a good tandem that individually you may look at Talanoa Hufanga and say, well, maybe he shouldn't start on a top 3 defense in the league if you look at him on paper as I do and see him as such. But when I look at them together, I take a little more comfort.
Yes. And again, he's a lot like, he's in a very similar position to Trey Lance. Like, you're not replacing a Hall of Famer. Right. You're replacing Jaquiski Tartt, who is a good, not great safety. No disrespect. Good, not great safety. Like, what Jaquiski Tartt gets the most credit for is being a short tackler and not giving up big plays in the passing game. Talanoa should be able to do that. I mean, we'll see. But in the one practice this week, he gave up no big plays. George Odom gave up a big play. Talanoa and Jimmy had Trey Lance looking for the tight ends and the running backs over and over and over. That's a good sign, because my question is are the big plays going to start getting – are they going to be giving up big plays because of him, because of his lack of speed? If the answer is no, then and he's just as good of a tackler as Tartt, then there's no drop-off. Yeah. And maybe he'll actually catch the long interception. Maybe he'll have some better ball skills. I mean, it's not a big bar. If he can be solid, he's a perfect replacement. And if he can be solid plus some playmaking, now you got an upgrade.
I expected this to be one of the more contentious battles in camp. And again, I realize this is just one day of observation. Things can obviously change. Hufanga has been in the system. George Odom is coming in fresh. It could be a night and day difference for him once it all clicks. Does it seem to you as if it's going to be a true competition, or does Talanoa Hufanga seem to be the clear leader at this point with a small sample size?
Small sample size. I've seen one practice. It almost seems like he's one of the more entrenched starters in the team.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you think about it, from those rookies last year, he might have gotten the most praise of any rookie from the coaches consistently. Nothing but, we really like him. And finding opportunities to get him on. I mean, they found more playing time for him than they found for Trey Lance last year.
They did.
And this offseason, what they did, they got rid of Tartt immediately. I mean, they didn't get rid of him. He's a free agent, but it was like, They're not like holding on to Tart just in case, just to see what they got rid of Tart. They brought in George Odom, who's never really been a starter, and they're like, we trust you, Trey. We're gonna have to see it from you, Talanoa. We trust you, and maybe there's a reason why I just really stuttered heck hard there. It's okay, I caught it.
It was interesting to see Jimmy Ward talk about how many starts Hufanga had and then have to be corrected about how many, him being like, it just seemed like he was out there a lot. Like he was constantly at my side. It felt like he had 10 starts last year.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm not wrong about that. It was just a first impression, but I'm looking at him thinking that guy looks like a vet. I'm not saying he plays like a vet, but he looks, look at his body. Definitely different than last year. Trey as well. Trey Sermon looks the same to me. Aaron Banks looks a little bit leaner. He looked good, and he's back on the left. So, I mean, I haven't seen him actually block anyone, but he looked leaner. He looked like he's in good shape. That's encouraging. Javon Kenlow just looks phenomenal. I mean, he really is huge. If his knee could ever just be cool, I do think he has a ton of talent. He looks like he's entering his third year. He looks like a third-year NFL beast. So that's another one.
Was there anyone, we're talking about physical jumps, but there's also the swagger jump, right? There's the comfort on the field. Did anybody make that swagger jump where you're like, oh, this dude's got some attitude this year?
Javon Jennings. Last year, Javon Jennings was like barely hanging on. And Mo Sanu was getting all these reps with the starters. On Tuesday, Mo Sanu's gone. Debo's not here yet. The starters are Ayuk and Jennings gets 5 targets. They go to him over and over. And again, like he's not going to get all the yak that Ayuk gets, but yak isn't a real big factor in practice. There's no tackling.
Right.
In practice, it's like, catch the ball, man. Can you help my completion percentage today?
Yeah.
And that's Jennings. He's huge, very big, long arms, and seems like he's been working. He's very consistent, stays healthy. Jennings.
I'm thrilled with the way he seems to have come into camp. I mean, that to have Debo and Ayuk as your 1 and 2, and then Jennings in there, not to mention what can Danny Gray add, what can Ray McCloud add. The top 5 in that wide receiver room really had me excited.
Absolutely. Ray actually made a good play. I was curious to see what do they do. How do they use Ray on day one? And it was only 7-on-7 mostly. So I think that the gadget stuff will be when they do 11-on-11 in preseason, but in 7-on-7, he contributed. Like, are you a real receiver? He ran a dig route, the 15-yard in, and caught the ball from Lance, out in front of it. It looked like didn't look like a gadget player to me. That's tough. That's tough. In traffic, moving across, safeties behind you. I mean, basically, I saw Dante Pettis struggle with that in the same setting and said, that's going to be a problem. Ray crossed that hurdle. No problem. No fear. And then he accelerated through the defense after. I mean, looked good to me. Yeah,
showed the dog mentality that clearly Kyle Shanahan wants in his wide receivers when they're going over the middle like that.
No doubt. So
was it a quick high and tight? That's I got to admit, I'm gonna have my eyes on Ray from that angle just because of the sheer number of fumbles. But after the catch, was it high and tight?
Oh, I didn't look. I'm not looking for that in practice because it's 2-hand touch essentially.
Yeah,
kind of 1-hand touch. They'll just come up and touch you like that.
Hey, as long as it avoids injuries in practice, I'm all for it.
Mo says, Grant, bro, settings, phone, silence, unknown callers. Man, I'm such a boomer. You can do that? My gut, thank you. Then yours. Are there any more? There might be. There might not be. Sorry. Let me just check real quick.
Yeah, no apologies necessary.
Whew. Okay. No, that's it. That's it. I gotta go. I'm taking my nephew out to lunch today. It's 12.
Nice.
It's 12. It's time for us to, have a heart to heart.
Set him straight for manhood. Give him some fatherly advice. The older cousin. That's good. Uncle Grant.
FS says, did Lance have a wobble on one throw when he missed? He had one of his misses. He had Jennings going to out route. He threw it high and behind Jennings. Jennings had to do one of these, and it was like a knuckleball. Everyone's like, but again, it's like it's okay because he hits most of his throws. He's very efficient. He makes good decisions. Sometimes the ball comes out funny.
I did have to laugh my ass off when Jack was like, I'm adding a column to the spreadsheet for wobble. I'm tracking the wobble.
Killer Cam says, Grant, did you know your interaction with Kenlow was on the Pat McAfee show? Yeah, I heard about it. I didn't watch it, though. I can't watch that show. I'm sorry. I just can't. But I heard it was, and I appreciate the promotion. Thank you. Rob, what you got going on?
I will be on with Jack this afternoon, probably going to be right at the 4:00 hour unless we get any sort of disruption there. So look for Jackhammer and Rob Schuh on the program. Other than that, enjoy this weekend. Get out to the Oregon coast. It's going to be a good one, man. I hope that you have some good plans for yourself as well.
I'll make some. I'm going to be chilling, relaxing. Thank you very much, everyone. Peace.